everybody, Serena from Spin and Dye in Texas here, and welcome to our Quarantine Fiber Group meeting. I'm so excited tonight because I'm going to be demoing how to do ribbon weaving. It's something that I just started doing. I'm not trying to say I am super expert at this or anything like that. I'm new, and it's just really fun, and I think it's something that you can do at home with hopefully some materials that you have around your house. And it's different and exciting. So I have a sample right here. This is one that I did a couple weeks ago, and I did a rainbow pattern. The one that we're going to do tonight is going to be closer to, yeah, that's the right way. Going to be more like this one here, where we're just going to use 3 colors. But once you understand the basic technique for this, the possibilities are endless on what you can do with color and playing with the optical illusion that occurs. So it's going to be really fun. I'm all prepped and ready to go. I have all the supplies out, and we'll talk about what supplies you need in just a minute. But before that, for those of you that joined, not last week, but the week before, to our Thursday meeting, I had been spinning a BFL fiber that I had gotten from a local yarn shop here, and I finally got it plied today, so I just wanted to share my progress on that one. Came out really pretty. I ended up doing a chain ply on it, so I got to keep the color transitions instead of doing the barber pole, which I like the barber pole too, but for this particular yarn, because the original colors were so similar, the barber pole, I thought you would lose some of the depth of it. So I was really glad to be able to do the chain ply for it. So I ended up with just about 200 yards, and I can't wait to figure out what I'm going to do with it. It might end up being a hat because I am working on hats still, and I've gotten quite a few done. I'll probably show those maybe at the Thursday meeting. I'll show those. So we'll give everyone just another minute just to see if anyone else wants to join so that they can get the demo all the way through. But until then, just so you know what I'm using tonight and then what you can use at home. So I have everything because you need pins for this. I use a foam board. This is one of those pieces of flooring that you can use for like a yoga studio or for a kid's room so that it's a little bit safer than hardwood. It's the same idea. Sorry, I think my camera is shaking. I apologize about that. It's the same type of stuff. I got a 4-pack of these for $10 at Aldi, and you can also use it for wet setting. So I bought those, and that's what I use. You can also use a piece of cardboard. You pin things to, you're going to pin the ribbon to the paper. And so it helps to have something underneath to protect whatever surface you're working on. And I do recommend it. It's not required, of course. If you think you have a deft hand with pins, more power to you. The first one I did, I was working on our ottoman, which is leather, and I managed to poke quite a few holes, which I didn't figure out until I went to pick the final project up, and it was still stuck to the ottoman. So I do recommend having something to cushion, and you want it to be something that's going to hold shape. So a piece of fabric might actually start to bend in as you go and affect the final shape of your project. So go with something firmer, but if you don't have foam or anything like that, feel free to use a piece of cardboard. That works just fine. Another special tool I'll be using tonight is this needle. And my husband printed this for me on the 3D printer. There is also a company that makes them, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the company, but I know the name of the needle is called a wefty. That's like the weft of your weave, but with an E at the end. You can purchase one of those. However, you can also, again, use a piece of cardboard that you've cut down. You want to make sure that it has a slot in the top to fit your ribbon through. Let's see, can you see that slot? There it is. There's that slot. You can use a tapestry needle, and you can also do it by hand, just weaving in with your fingers. The The only problem with that is it tends to be a little bit more clumsy. And so if you have something that you can use, I recommend it, but it's certainly not required. So we have the needle, we have the board. I have my pins. So I've mentioned before, I am not a sewer. I don't have a fancy one of those things that you stick your pins in. I just have the little box that they came in, but works just fine. And a pair of scissors. Then I have this tool here. You need to be able to measure out a 30-degree angle. Again, my husband printed this for me on our 3D printer, and it gives me all the angles, all of them. I'm very, not just one or two, no, I get all the angles here. But if you do not have something like a compass or something like that to set the angle with, there are also a lot of service PDFs online that you can print out and do the same thing. And oftentimes when you print out a 30-degree angle to measure off with, it's not going to be wide enough necessarily for the project you're going to work on. Well, this isn't really wide enough either, this one side here. And so you'll get to see kind of how I work around that. It's not too hard. So you can also print one out. And then the last thing you need is ribbon. So I am using these 3 colors tonight. So we're going to do kind of a fire-inspired weave, but you can use any colors you want. However, do not use the same color, same shade for all 3. You need 3 different rainbow colors, ribbon colors. They are technically part of the rainbow too, but then all colors are. So you do need 3 different colors. It is a good idea to go light, medium, and dark. Mine are a little bit different than that, but I'm hoping the contrast will work out pretty well. On this one here, you can see that I have black, white, and then for the tops of these boxes, I just did rainbow all the way down, and that works too. So you can play with color, but you do need at least 3 different colors of ribbon. Last thing, this pattern, if you are a quilter, you'll know it is called the tumbling blocks pattern. And that is pretty much all I know about it from a quilting perspective. But it is a tumbling blocks pattern. And so once you know the basics that we're going to go over today, you can actually manipulate it. And this was my first attempt at manipulation here. And you can see that you get a star, a 6-pointed star in there, because I adjusted the way I laid the ribbon down. And so there are different ways that you can manipulate the basic pattern to get different shapes. But we're doing the blocks today. It's the simplest one to do, in my opinion, of what I've seen so far. As I said, not an expert. So we're going to start from the beginning. So I have a piece of paper. Well, technically it's 2 pieces of paper because I don't have one piece that's big enough, that I've blocked out here. I have it already pinned on my board, and I've just done a basic grid. These are about 2-inch squares. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just going to provide you with a guide. Oh, almost forgot. You also need interfacing if you want to set, if you want to be able to transfer it to something else. If you're just going to pin it on a frame, in a frame kind of like this, you could probably get away without the interfacing. If you can't get access to interfacing right now, because I know it's kind of slim, you can always do this portion and then put the interfacing on that side or on the top and then flip it over. And what you're not able to see would become the top of your piece. So you have options there as well. So I've already marked out the 2-inch grid because that's pretty easy. I've got my compass here. I don't know if this is technically a compass. We're going to call it a compass. So I've got my compass here, and I've got it set to a 30-degree angle, and it's not going to show up on the camera, but there's little numbers on there. So I've got it set to a 30-degree angle, and I'm lining it up against the bottom of the box that I've already drawn out. And I'm starting at the corner because that is where my compass is long enough to stretch across what I've blocked out. So I've got a Sharpie, and I'm just going to make a line. And we have a 30-degree angle. Now, what I do next is I straighten out my compass. So now it's just a straight line. I line it up with that 30 degrees. And now I'm going to slide 2 inches along the bottom-ish. Like I said, the inches here are not as important as that 30-degree angle and that basic grid that you have. So if you do 2 inches, if you want to do 4 inches, I wouldn't recommend going like 1/2 inch, because if you go 1/2 inch, you just end up with a lot of extra guides that you don't really need, because you're really only going to be able to see this for the first portion of what you're doing anyway. So be relatively focused when you're doing the grid, but don't worry if it's not pretty. Doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to give you a guideline. That 30-degree angle is what creates the illusion. So that's why it's so important that you make sure that your 30-degree angle is correct. Everything else is just extra guide work for you. So I've done the top left corner to the bottom right corner. Now I need to do from the top right corner to the bottom left corner, so the opposite way. So I'm going to do the same thing, only this is kind of an interesting way that I have to do this. So it goes backwards now. So here we go. Got my first line in. So now I can just straighten this out. Go down to that line. There we go. We're going to slide up straight. Now I've got my 30 degrees. The nice thing is, if you do this once and you take care of your paper, you generally can use it for more than one project. So I have one that I have been using. I think this will be the 4th project that I've used it on. And it just gets pinholes in it, so you don't really have to worry about it. So you just keep going and you end up with this grid. Now, I am very excited because I get to stop here, but you can kind of see. So this is what your grid is going to end up looking like once you have the whole paper done. But because we have a limited amount of time, I get to do something I've always wanted to do. I'm telling you, you guys don't even know how excited I am. We've got a bit of TV magic happening because voila. So I did my grid earlier, and I also laid the interfacing down, which, let me get this in the camera angle a little bit better. So here's my interfacing, and you can see the edge of my grid underneath there. And then to save time so that I could show you guys the more technical portion of this, I've also laid my weft out. Now I'm doing the weft in the red, and this is literally just straight pieces of ribbon that I've laid out. I'm using 1/2 inch ribbon. You can go bigger or smaller, but all 3 of your colors need to be the same size. Okay, so if you're going to do 5/8 inch ribbon, if you're going to do 1 inch ribbon, that's fine. Go for it. Just make sure that all 3 colors are 5/8 or 1 inch or whatever you picked. So these are just straight up and down, and I've pinned them at the top and the bottom. When I pin, and here we can pull this one out so I can show you. So when I pin, I make sure that my pin is going the opposite direction. Oh, you can't see that. Okay, so I make sure that the pin goes in at the opposite angle into the ribbon. So my ribbon is pushing this way, so my pin is going in and I'm pushing it in toward me. And that way, I just find that it's a little bit more stable than if you just put it straight. You're going to be manipulating a lot. And so because of that, you want them to hold. You can adjust them as you go, but it helps. When I do mine, when I lay mine out, which this is 10 inches by 10 inches, and you can see that you can see the edge of my grid right here. Most importantly, you can see those 30-degree angled lines. And I think that's very important because it just helps so you're not having to peek too much into your weft to see where you're at. So everybody with me so far? I hope so. Now, the next color I'm going to use is the orange because we're going to go, technically I don't have dark, medium, and light, but we're going to call it dark, medium, and light. So we've started with dark, we're going to go to the medium, and then the light is the third thing that we do. So I'm going to take this off. I've got just a little piece of tape on there. Now the ribbon that I got is on these weird styrofoam pieces, but the nice thing is the hole in the center, I just grab a pin. Oh, I have one right here. I stick it in my board. I don't know if you can see it, but I promise you it's there. Well, here, we'll put it up there for now. And then I center my ribbon on it, and now I can pull it pretty easy. I'm actually going to move it down, but you can see. But now it moves without flopping all over the place or falling on the ground and rolling halfway across the house, which has happened more than once, unfortunately. So I've got my needle here. I'm just putting, now I have two-sided ribbon. So I have one side that has a little bit of a sheen to it and the other side is matte. So I want to make sure that the side with the sheen is pointed up when I run my needle through. My needle also bends up at the end a little bit. So I want, when I put it into the piece, I want the flat side to lay down and that curved tip to go up. Now, and like I said, not an expert on this yet. I've done 6 of these so far, so I have my pattern written down. So the very first thing we're going to do is we are going to go over the first warp thread under, or warp ribbon, under the next 2 warp ribbons, over 1, under 2, and we're going to follow that pattern all the way across. So over 1, under 2, over 1. It's coming, under 2, over 1. And see, this can get a little bit finicky. It helps if you have long nails. I think it's one of the few, that and beading are the 2 things that if you have long nails, it's really going to help out. But we're going to go over 1, under 2, all the way across. Now, when you get to the opposite side, you may not be able to finish that pattern. You may end up going, in my case, I went under 1. In your case, you might end up with an over 1 as your last or whatever. It's fine. Don't worry about that. As long as you followed the pattern all the way across, you're going to be fine. So I'm going to pull it off my needle. I'm going to find my 30-degree angle, and this is the angle that's going up from right to left. I'm going to line it up there. I'm going to grab some pins. Now, I like to take some out of here and just kind of pop them over on the side because it makes it easier to grab out and not stab yourself in the thumb because that is no fun. I actually found a needle earlier today that didn't have a sharp tip on it. It was blunted, which I've never seen before. But anyway, okay, so I've got some needles over there now, and I'm just going to pin. And same thing I did with the warp that we talked about is I'm going to pin the opposite direction that the fiber is going, that the ribbon is going. So the angle of the pin comes down like this, and I do a pretty sloped angle. It's probably closer to like this, just because I try and keep myself from stabbing through my board and into my table that I have here. And so, where did I put? There. So I wind it directly off from the piece of styrofoam or bobbin or whatever you happen to have your ribbon on. And then I cut it. And then just because it eliminates waste, you want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room on where you cut. You don't want to cut right up against the warp so that you can put a pin in this side as well. But you don't need more than 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. If you're really good at pinning, if it's something that you do regularly, you can probably get away with a little bit less. If your ribbon is a little bit sturdier, you can probably get away with a little bit less as well. So that's our first one. And that was over 1, under 2, over 1, and so on. Next one, we're going to go under 1, over 1, under 2, over 1, under 2, whoop, over 1, and so we go on. So now we're back to that same pattern. It's just that where you start, that changes. So we started, the first row that we did was over 1, under 2. The second row that we did, we started with under 1, over 1, under 2, over 1, and then we just continue all the way through. And we're getting there. Now, and you'll notice I'm already having this problem where I start to run into my needles, because, I mean, not needles, pins. And I just pull them out, pull my ribbon through, and then I'll pin everything back in together. And I do it like this, still following the pattern. So I'm ending, where did I mess up? Oh, I need to pull 2 pins out. There we go. So I'm ending over 1. So I'm going to lay that down, lay that warp thread down or warp ribbon down as well, and then stick my pin right back in there. And then stick my pin right back in there. Okay. So now we come back down to this side. Put a little tail for us and pin that as well. Okay. And this is the last pattern we need to remember for this section. So we'll go over that real quick. And that is, see, I'm still checking my notes because I'm still learning. So we did over 1, under 2, over 1, under 2, under 1, over 1, under 2, over 1, under 2, over 1. Now we're going to do under 2, over 1, under 2. If I can get that under there, over 1. And whoops, it's getting in there. It's getting in there, I promise you. All right. So the reason why each one is different is because we want to change when this orange is poking out against the red, because that's what's going to start our box shape. So I need to pull these pins out just to get it through there smoothly. Slide that down. Now, I will say there is a video by a person by the name of Mr. Domestic that really helped me learn this technique. If you find that you start doing it and you really enjoy it, I recommend checking out his video as well. I thought it was very helpful, and he's pleasant to listen to. I don't know him personally or anything, but it was a really nice video. It was actually the only other one that I could find that explained how to do this in a way that made sense and also in English. So I am not bilingual by any stretch of the means, and so that's kind of a requirement for me, just because it's hard. If not, I'm just watching it be done, and I needed an explanation. So Mr. Domestic is his name, and his videos are pretty interesting, and the one that he has for fabric weaving is very informative. Now, that is one, well, wait, before we talk about that. So we've done the 3 different weaves in, right? We are going to continue that pattern until we reach this corner here. And then we'll stop and talk about what we're going to do from this section down. So while I'm doing that, you can do this with other materials. You can do it with fabric, where you just cut strips of fabric, and then I'm not a quilter, guys, I'm not a sewer, but I think you fold a 1-inch strip in half and iron it, and that will allow you to get 1/2-inch strips that you can then do the same weaving technique with. The pattern's the same, everything, it's just a different medium instead of ribbon, you just use cotton fabric. Anything like that is fine. You could use paper. You could use plastic bags. You could use t-shirt yarn. The only problem with t-shirt yarn or anything like that is it's pretty stretchy. And I would be a little bit concerned that you would end up having something that warped once you took it off. If your interfacing was strong enough, I think you'd be okay, but I don't know for certain. So I would stick with things that are flat, unless you just want to play around. Hi guys, hi Marla, hi Connie. So I'm going to trim this down and we will keep going here. Now, while I'm doing this part, I have to say I had the most delicious dinner today. You guys don't even know. You don't even know. It was so good. My husband and I love corned beef. And we like making Reubens with our corned beef. Unfortunately, we've been unable to find rye bread for 2 weeks. And so I had a corned beef in the freezer. And I decided to cook it yesterday, and we had just corn. We basically had a Reuben without having any rye bread. And then tonight we took all the stuff that you use to make a Reuben and we put it in a baked potato. Oh my goodness. It was the most delicious dinner we've had in quarantine, I'm fairly certain, except for maybe my husband's mac and cheese. And it was just, I don't think I'll eat Reubens anymore. I think I'm going to just eat them in a baked potato. Oh my God, it was so good. It was better than, if you have Jason's Delis in your area, it was even better than Jason's Delis potatoes. It was so good. So I'm looking very forward to lunch tomorrow because we have extras and that is what I will be eating for lunch. And then I probably won't be hungry for dinner, but it's worth it. I'm telling you, it's worth it. So I'm just continuing the pattern up. So let me hold this up for you real quick, just so you can see what we're doing here. So we're getting diamonds. There we go. There we go. There was a little bit too much glare on there, but we're getting diamonds, and that pattern is just going to continue all the way through. If you're trying to see if your pattern is right, I don't recommend looking at the edges because your little tails on the side can mess with the illusion a little bit and tend to stand out. So try and look more toward the center of the piece. If you're just trying to make sure that you haven't missed a warp ribbon or something like that, just look at that center and chances are you'll be fine. But yeah, Reuben baked potatoes, y'all. I highly recommend it. Oh, and Marla says, working with fabric, you would need to fold both sides under to enclose the raw edges, which makes perfect sense. Thank you, Marla. Thank you. And so follow her instructions because she's the one who was working on the face masks last meeting, so she knows what she's talking about. I do not know what I'm talking about when it comes to fabric. So, okay, so see where I'm at here. I'm on 3, so I'm under 2 over 1. And you can see how quickly this goes. The thing I like about it too is that it's a project that you could do with someone who wasn't necessarily big into crafts and is just starting to open up to the idea of the fiber arts. You could do it with somebody who was younger. There's not anything sharp that you have to deal with except for the scissors. And most kids can handle scissors to one degree or another, or you can work the scissors for them. You can also actually cut strips in advance. Oops, I forgot to put it down over there. Cut strips in advance for a younger person that maybe you don't want working with scissors, or just somebody who doesn't have the dexterity for it. You could cut strips for them to do this and let them weave it in and then trim the ends as you go. And the project would still come out just fine. So it's a fun thing to do. It comes out with such a cool result. And my pin was in the way. And I've been framing all of mine. My mom suggested that I should, that they could be turned into pillows and that, like pillow fronts and that kind of thing, which I also think is a fantastic idea. But I do not have a sewing machine. So all of mine are being framed. And I think after quarantine, I might impose on my mother a little bit and ask her to make me a pillow out of one of them. But I'll make her one first so that it'll be her payment. Or I'll just make her the front and she can make her own pillow. There's an option too. There we go. And honestly, I double up on pins a lot. If you have access to a lot of pins, if you do any type of sewing really, or any other craft that would require them, then you may not have to double up as much and you may prefer to just do a separate pin for each one. I find that I like it this way because then I'm not causing traffic on my edges too much. But you could absolutely do this with a fresh pin for every single thread and be fine. And I am so sorry. I have you guys on a table today and I keep noticing the camera shaking. So I hope that's not too distracting for you guys. So once I get up here at the very corners, this, even if you are using a needle, you can just weave it in by hand and it works out just as well because you only have to go over and under once or twice. But I like using the needle just because I feel fancy when I use special tools. It's probably why I started spinning to begin with. It's a special tool. You know, if you are a weaver and you do backstrap or inkle loom weaving, you could even weave pieces to put into ribbon weaving like this. And that would be really cool. I have seen some where they used multiple colors and you get the illusion of the boxes, but it's the colors change a lot more. And so it's a little bit dramatic for the eye to look at, but they're gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I've seen it with printed fabrics as well. So you could do that if you do backstrap weaving and you're like, I have all of these huge pieces and I don't know what to do with them. You could trim them down and do something like this. Okay, so I'm at the corner. So now I'm going to start going down from my first ribbon here. So we went we went over, under 2, then we went under 1, over 1, and then we went under 2. So now we're going to do it in reverse. So if this is 1, 2, 3, I need to start with 3 and start going 3, 2, 1, back down. So that's what I'm going to do. It's not a different pattern at all. It's just continuing the pattern down, and to do that we have to go in reverse. So if this first one was over 1, under 2, and I'm coming down, the next one is going to be under 2, over 1, and then continue. So there we go. Now I do find that my warp ribbons get kind of loose as I go through and do this. I generally will just go through and tighten them up when we get to the next section and let it go through, which oh geez, we were already 33 minutes. So hopefully we'll make it to the next section. Maybe I'll just do part of this and just do enough to show you guys because it's so fun. It's so neat the way, okay, right now I see diamonds. Yay, yay, I see diamonds. And then before I just saw strips. Okay, yay, I did strips. But then as you keep going, all of a sudden you see boxes. And you can't unsee the boxes once you've seen them, but you have to get to that third color. So we will make sure to get there, if only for 1 or 2 strips, so you guys can see that. Ooh. Okay, I'm putting my pins up here, sorry. I have to take more out. There we go. All right. Oh, because I didn't pin that side yet. And remember, I am still putting them in at that angle just to make sure that they hold a little better. If you put them in at the wrong angle, it doesn't hurt, but it can create a little bit more agitation as you're going through because your ribbon will move more. So if you put it in the opposite angle that you want the ribbon to be pulling towards, then you end up with a sturdier overall piece. And until you get it fused on the interfacing, until you get it fused, it's not super duper sturdy. Now, another thing that you can do is you can put pins in the middle to hold the position. I haven't done it that way yet, so I can't say whether or not it's better or worse. The reason why I haven't done it that way is because I need to be able to pick up the warp threads, and I'm worried that if I put pins in the middle, it's going to put too much stress on the ribbon, and I might end up with small tears. I might see little problems, and since I'm using a lot of color, a tear with that white interfacing on the back is going to be very noticeable. So I have not done pins in the center, but it's definitely something you can try and see if that gives you a little bit more stability. To be honest though, unless you're using a ribbon that's incredibly thin, I don't know measurements. I don't know how thin ribbon goes, but if you were doing something very, very thin, it might be worth it just because of how tedious that would be. But for this size, and this is 1/2 inch and these ones were 5/8 inch, I haven't seen a lot of shifting happening. So it's worked just fine without having the pins in the middle. Okay. All right, I'm going to try and do 2 more, and then I'll do the opposite, the second part, or the third part technically, so you can see what it looks like in the end. I'd hoped with my little TV Magic change out that there would be enough time, but I think we'll run out. So I probably talk too much. I've been known to do that. I mean, I know I come across shy and quiet and, but it turns out I can talk. I can talk just a little bit. So, but you can see how fast this would go, and this would definitely be something that you can do at home, kill the afternoon just fine, and have a nice project to then do something with, which if you are a sewer or have a sewing machine and are learning sewing or anything like that, you could absolutely, with it being on the interfacing, you could absolutely develop it into a pillowcase front or something like that. You can also make these bigger if you wanted to do a larger piece. I've been sticking to around the 10-inch-ish size because I like it. You get the boxes, you get that tumbling feeling, and they go by really quick. I did 2 in a day one time and was able to finish both of them. So I thought that kind of goes to show, especially since most of the projects that I tend to work on take more time. Weaving is a long process. Spinning is generally a long process too. They're fun processes, of course, but you don't always get to see that nice, fun end result right away. It might be 15, 20 more hours of work. And so this one, just a nice, quick hobby, nice thing to have set aside as a gift. I'm even making something similar as a wedding gift for a friend. And so it's nice to have this in my back pocket now. I really have enjoyed doing it. Okay. Maybe one more. Yeah, I can do one more. Because the second part, once you do the first row, is very easy. The first warp pulled through, it's very easy, but that first warp is confusing. So I want to make sure that I have time to talk to you guys about that. And we might end up going a minute or 2 over today, which I apologize. I've been trying really hard not to do that to you guys because I know sometimes you're watching something and you're like, man, I want to see it to the end, but I had something to do. So I've been trying very hard, but we might be a little long tonight. So just finishing this one up. Okay. And in the pin goes. Give that scissor a snip. I'm going to pull that ribbon off of my pin for now, so I can show you where we're at. Okay. So this is what I have so far. Now, normally you would finish all the way across, but like I said, I want to make sure to show you guys the last step. And to do that, I'm going to skip this for right now. I'll go back and do it later. For the next part, what we need to do is follow that other angle that we had marked off earlier. So we were going right to left, right bottom to left top. Now we're going to need to go left bottom to right top. So I'm going to be doing that with the yellow. So I've got the yellow on my pin there. Set my tape aside, down out of the way so I don't knock it off. Okay. This part of the two different wefts that you're going to put in, this one is harder, I think, than the first weft that we just did with that 1, 2, 3 pattern. And it's because you have to kind of visualize the end result that you're going for in order to see where to start. The first weft that we did, we didn't have to see where to start. We had to make sure it was a 30-degree angle, but we could have done the 30-degree angle up here, down here. I started in the middle, and it's fine. It doesn't matter. But now we've laid out the foundation for our pattern, so we need to make sure that we are weaving into that foundation versus just wherever we want to go. So what we're going to look for is where you see, Mr. Domestic described it as a Z. I have trouble seeing the Z personally. Here, wait, I'm going to turn it so you can see it the way I'm looking at it. Okay. Let's see. Okay, you can see. Hopefully there's not too much glare on there. So what I look for is where I see, hang on. I have to look at it. Oh my goodness. Okay. So you see, whoops, let's bring that over. There we go. You see this piece here, this diamond, and then this diamond. The diamonds go straight across the project, but they're actually two separate wefts going, weft ribbons going across. So I want to go under both of those, and I'm going to pop it out on the other side. And then I'll lift it back up to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to go under, and this takes some finagling too, which is another reason why I don't pin in the center of the project, because I want to go under this warp, this weft, under the warp thread here, under the weft right here, and I'm going to pop it out right there. So you pull it through so you see the contrast a little bit better. Okay, so you see what we're doing here. Now it's a little bit easier for me to see the Z that Mr. Domestic talked about. So here is the Z. It works. It's just for some reason, I don't want to say that, I don't want it to sound like I'm saying he did bad job explaining it or anything like that. He really didn't. It's just my brain has trouble wrapping my head around that. What am I on top of under there? Oh, get that out of the way. Okay. So pull that out and do it again. So I'm going under that Z, under that, and it really is the two diamonds that go right next to each other. Then I go over the next two warp threads, or warp, I'm sorry, I keep saying thread because I'm used to it. Warp ribbon, warp ribbon. So I'm over two warp ribbons, and then I'm going to pop under the next two diamonds that are next to each other. And I'm hoping, here, wait, let me finish it and I'll show you exactly what it looks like, because seeing it makes so much sense. And then once you do it, it makes even more sense. Explaining it is difficult because it's a very visual thing. It's very much about looking at it and seeing where those boxes take shape. And as you pull the weft through, you will start to see the shape of the boxes. And the first time I did it, my husband was upstairs and I went, oh my gosh, I see the boxes, I see the boxes. And he came down and he's like, what are you talking about? Because I probably sounded crazy. I mean, I'm downstairs by myself with my dogs, just hanging out, you know, and all of a sudden, just loud old me comes out with, oh my gosh, I see boxes. Probably sounded crazy. But okay. So let me pick this up and show you. Okay. So here's the yellow that I just put in. Here's the orange and then the red. The red is pretty easy to see. Yeah, because the way the light is, it's kind of hard to see that yellow. I'm sorry about that. So I went under the two diamonds that were next to each other. I came out of that diamond and went over two warp threads. Then I went under the next two diamonds, over two warp threads, under the two diamonds, over the two warp threads, and then under to finish. And you can start to see the boxes, and wait until I do the next one, because once you've done that, it's very easy to continue the pattern without having to do the counting that we did with, we'll call it weft number 1 and this weft number 2. With weft number 1, you have to make sure to count to stay in pattern. With this side, I find it easier once you get that first one in, because you just need to make sure that you're always touching the row before. So this first one, I went under the two diamonds. So now I'm going to have to go over, right? Because there's, because we're making boxes. So I'm going to go over the first two warp ribbons, ribbon. And then I'm going to go under the two diamonds that are lying next to each other. And I'm going to pop out over those two warp threads, ribbons. I swear, I'm so sorry. And then under the two diamonds, over the warp ribbon, under the two diamonds, and pop it out to the other side. And you'll notice I keep pulling these pins out and putting them back in, and that's fine. I do try and make sure that my tension stays pretty even, because it can start to warp, particularly as you continue going. So just make sure that you just put a little bit of pressure on the ribbons before you put the pins back in, and that just helps keep everything a little bit more stable. And I have had times where I forgot to put the pin in, and I go to pin this side and I just pull the whole thing back out again. If it happens to you, don't worry, you won't be the first one. And so I'm going to pop that in there, give this a little cut. And now we really start start to see those boxes coming out. So we can see, my warp is getting a little bit loose there, fix that. Okay, so we can really start to see those boxes take shape, and that tumbling pattern is starting to emerge. So I'm going to keep going. And, oh, that was the other thing I was going to show you. So notice how my yellow lines right up against my yellow. You'll notice if you do it wrong, if your yellow is not pushed right up against, or if your second weft is not pushed right up against the weft ribbon that you put in before. So if you start to see gaps, you missed something somewhere and you just need to go back and find where you missed it. And if you take a step back, because the second or third one that I did, I was looking at it and I was, you know, you're kind of up on it like this. And so it gives you a very limited view. And I was looking at it and I was like, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. Well, the nice thing is, because this is an optical illusion, if you take a step back and try and absorb the whole picture, where there are flaws really pop out at you, because you start to see this repeating pattern of box, 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 and then all of a sudden it breaks up. Your eye can't see it because you've missed something. And so if you feel like something's not looking right here, but I can't tell what, take a step back and look at it from a distance, and you're going to be able to see where that mistake is or that flaw. So the next one, get that back on there. And my ribbon does this thing where it just starts to wind, and it kind of drives me bananas. So I always have to stop and straighten it out. Oh, and Marla, it was easier to see this. I'm glad it was easier to see. It's the colors in person. You can definitely see the difference, the variation in the colors. But I think because they all have that satin sheen on them, when it's catching the light in my house, it's kind of coming across on the camera very monotone. Monotone, sure. And so I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad you were able to see it a little bit better the second time around. So I'm going to pull that pin out. I'll put it back in a second. This one, we are going to go under. And remember, I'm just looking at those boxes and seeing, okay, where did the yellow pop out before? Where do I need it to pop out now to make another top to a box? And so I went under the warp, under one diamond, over two warps, under two diamonds, over two warps, under two diamonds. Pull that needle out. Let's get that sucker in there. Come on. There we go. And out it comes. If the needle doesn't want to get stuck in there, that would be great. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. So I'll show it to you again, because every time we add, well, as soon as I get it back pinned, but every time you add another ribbon on that second weft, the pattern just becomes more and more and more obvious. And it just is the most rewarding when you see that, because you go, oh my gosh, I created that. I don't even understand it, but I created it. Or at least if you're me. I don't understand. I mean, it makes my eyes kind of go, but I like it. So I'll show this to you again. I have to say, I'm amazed my dogs have been so quiet today. I was very concerned for you guys. My dogs love to follow me around and bark. And generally, I don't mind it. But today they've been very quiet. And I thought, oh, they're saving all that barking up so that as soon as I turn that camera on, it's going to be yip, 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 yip. And all of you would turn the volume off because it gets loud. But no, they've been so quiet. They're just sitting back there relaxing. So, okay. Let's see if we can tilt that in a little bit to get some of that glare off. Yep. Yeah, the orange and the yellow are still coming out. almost the same, but you can still see these boxes that we're creating. Hang on. Can we get it to a place? No, it probably doesn't help that I have those ugly yellow lights in my house too. I like white lights. There we go. There, you can see it there. So we have these really nice boxes starting to emerge. And as you continue to go, that box pattern is going to continue to flow across. And that's all you have to do with, oh, thank you, Connie. I really enjoy doing it. I really do. So with the first weft, when I went to the opposite side of where I had started, I had to make sure that I was going in reverse. It is the same thing with the second weft. However, it's a little bit less complicated because all we have to do is make sure that we are pushing that yellow to the forefront where it needs to go and that it's pushed up against the previous ribbon. So, pop this on there. Now, this one's going to be a little bit messed up because I haven't finished the other side yet. I'm going to go back and do that later. But just for the sake of showing you what I mean. There. And I will say, when you're doing the second weft, you almost at times will feel like you're pushing the ribbon too close to the previous ribbon, like you're going under the same wefts and the same warp threads in the same spaces. You're not. Unless unless your second weft is crossing your second weft, you're doing fine. So don't let that fool you. I like to think it's just part of the illusion, as he says on Arrested Development. It's an illusion. I love that show. The first 3 seasons. The Netflix seasons, not so much. But the first 3 seasons are hilarious. Okay. Should have done different colors, but I'm on an orange kick. I'm on a rainbow kick too. Just depends on the day, I guess, but I'm on an orange kick. And so I have some 7 braids that I did that are orange and red. And I'm on this kick, which is weird because my favorite color is absolutely 100% purple. All day, all the time. If my whole house could be purple, it would be. I do not think my husband would like that very much. He's repeatedly told me that I'm not allowed to paint our house purple. But perhaps one day. So this is the one that I added below. So this is where I started right here. And I was moving upward, but then I went underneath and added below. And you can see it still pushes right up against the yellow of the previous ribbon, the previous weft ribbon. It's still pushing right up against there. It's still sliding in. And when I said that you'll feel like you're going under the same sections, so this one here, the ribbon went under this orange and under this red. Well, here I went over the red of the warp, but then I went under the exact same weft of this orange here. And if you are a weaver, especially if you're a rigid head weaver, we'll say, it tends to go against the grain a little bit because we're so used to over, under, over, under, over. Blah. See, we're that used to it. Whereas with this, you might be going over under the same warp or weft ribbons. even though it's going to emerge in a different place. So trust your instincts on that one. Look for the box shape because it does emerge almost immediately. When you put that first ribbon of your second weft, so in my case, yellow, when you put that first one through, you go, oh my gosh, there's boxes there. And then after that, you're just unlocking all the rest of the boxes. It's like a video game. You just, ooh, I got to the next level. Ooh, I got to the next level. So trust your instincts on that one. It is very easy. And once you see it, you can't really unsee where your weft needs to go. And just remember, if you do not have a husband who will 3D print things for you, or a large tapestry needle, you can use a piece of cardboard, or you can even use a very sturdy piece of construction paper, something like that. I would not recommend using printer paper or notebook paper. I think at that point it would just be too weak. You might as well do it by hand. But anything with just a little bit more sturdiness to it will get you through. And that's all you have to do. And then you can end up, and then once you get it, the colors are just endless. Just try everything because it's super fun. Oh, good idea, Marla. And that will absolutely work. You can use a safety pin to run it through. The only thing is, it will depend on how thick your ribbon is on whether or not a safety pin will be more or less effective than just doing it by hand. If you're doing something that's very thick, then I don't know, because the safety pin is not really long, then I don't know if it would be as helpful, but it's definitely something to consider if that's what you have at home. Try it. It can't hurt anything to try it. One last thing that I want to say, and then we will end for the day because I know, like I promised, we're over. Oh, yes, Connie, kind of like a large nail file, only it's just plastic. So one last thing, and that is I would not recommend using ribbon that has wire on the edges of it, because you do so much bending. You're probably going to get wrinkles that'll be really hard to get out, especially once you go to iron it to the interfacing, because once it's on there, that thing's stuck. So I wouldn't recommend ribbon with wire in it. And if you are using ribbon and then you go to iron it, just keep in mind that most ribbon is going to be acrylic. And so you want to be careful with heat. I always lay a towel down and then iron over the towel so I'm not getting too much heat directly on the ribbon itself. I have not managed to melt my ribbon yet, which I'm very proud of. And I haven't managed to lose the sheen yet, which I'm also very proud of. But I'm sure it'll happen eventually. So that is ribbon weaving. I hope you had fun. Thank you so much for joining. I had fun. I had fun setting this up for you guys today. I had fun doing my first TV change out. I was very excited. We will be meeting again on Thursday. If you enjoyed this but need to see it again, of course, the video will be on the channel, but I'm going to do a very similar demonstration on Thursday for those that were unable to join tonight. So you can get that a second time if that's something that you want. And I'll be doing different colors because I think this one might be a little bit harder to see on the camera. So I'll probably switch to something maybe like the grays that I have over here or something like that, just to get a bit more contrast for the camera. So we are meeting again on Thursday for that. I'm not sure what I'm going to be working on next week, but I hope you guys all join because it's going to be fun, whatever it is. And that's pretty much all I have for you. So you guys have a great night and a great rest of the week if I don't see you on Thursday, and keep on working on your fiber. I'll talk to you later. Bye.